William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbeck's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbeck's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College of Complex class.
Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 225th meeting that we've had since we started. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me all right? Is this thing working? Yeah, it's not working. Is it working all right? She can't hear me, she said. How's that? A little better? A little better? Can you hear me now? Still can't hear me? Can you hear me now? A little better? Can you hear me? I don't know. He can hear me. Oh yeah, you got your earmuff. He can hear me fine. How about there? Can you hear me all right? All right. Well, anyway, this is our 225th meeting since we started, which was in February of 2009. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require our speakers take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give our speaker an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind the interrupter that we listen to only one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. We live up to that. After that, we have questions and answers, not speeches. You get to question the speaker and get an answer, whatever that is. And then finally, following that, we have remarks, rebuttals. Everyone in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at this podium to respond to what the speaker said for or against. And then our speaker gets a comment and close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we introduce our speakers, now is the time for announcements. If anybody has any announcements. Any announcements? If anybody has an announcement, now's the time to make it. No announcements? You got one? No? Food is good? Nothing? All right, well, I got a few here.
I'll give you one, Jim.
You got an announcement? All right, come on up here.
All right, considering the subject of today, there is going to be a rally at City Hall about 10 o'clock a.m. next Saturday. It's supposed to be take down the takeover. They want to put a rally out there and get as many people, teachers and whatnot, and I will be there to record the event. Saturday, Dallas City Hall at about 10 a.m. You can find it on, you can finally find the entry on Facebook on Take Down the Takeover. You have to put spaces in between the words. Facebook is not playing nice. They keep rerouting it. Took me 4 or 5 events, tries to get it, so they're not being nice. So it's, you got Take Down, each word separate with a space, the Takeover.
Gene posted it on the DFO-CIO site today on the Facebook page.
Susie, yes.
Hi guys, I've got some kind of sad news to share. Many of you have seen and met Francis and Bill Rasco. Bill was going to be 92 years old this summer. He passed away about a week and a half ago. So it was peaceful. Francis is fine with it, but she wanted to be sure to let you all know that his services will be held in Mesquite at the First United Methodist Church on Galloway. That is Galloway right as you come up to the train tracks close to downtown Mesquite, very close to Mesquite High School. That service will be held Monday at 10 a.m. for anybody who can attend, who remembers Bill. He's just a great guy. Was always telling stories about the things that he saw and the things that he learned during the war. He was a regular. He and Francis are both regulars here at the College of Complexes, and they Bill occasionally had a rebuttal or a story to tell. So we'll all miss him, but we wish him well on his journey. So that's Monday at 10 a.m., First United Methodist Church in Mesquite. The second announcement that I have is that the North Texas Democratic Women are holding a fundraiser at the Lakewood Country Club this Wednesday, starting at 11. Individual tickets are $70. So if you're flush with cash and you'd like to support a good cause, go to the North Texas Democratic Women's meeting at, I believe it starts at 11 on Wednesday. And then finally, if you still have cash after that and you'd like to support another good cause, the Ann Richards dinner, which is a fundraiser for the Texas Democratic Party, will be Saturday at the Dallas World Aquarium, and the tickets for that individually are $100 a piece. So I'm not sure what the attire is for that, but you guys can get online to the Texas Democratic Party website and look for the Ann Richards dinner if you're interested in supporting that. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? Come on up here.
I'm a member of the Women's Chorus of Dallas, and we'll be having a concert on Sunday and Mother's Day, celebrating women and mothers. It's going to be at Texas Discovery Gardens on Mother's Day at 2 p.m. So if you want more information, you can go to the women'schorusofdallas.org, and you can get tickets online. It's going to be great. And I think we're going to also do one song in the butterfly room and have a butterfly release and all kinds of stuff. So bring your mothers and daughters and grandmothers and anyone who wants to come. It's going to be a great concert. So thanks.
Any other announcements? Well, our Jim, you want to make your usual announcement?
Not every week.
All right. It's not every week, huh?
Just at this hour.
Jim will just remind you to be kind to our waitress and make sure you order something. So that's basically what I would say. You would say.
That's the core.
That's the core. All right.
They treat it.
Memorial Day weekend, we're not scheduling a meeting for that particular Memorial Day weekend. I don't think we'll have a meeting. So just so you know, don't think there'll be a meeting on Memorial Day. And the 19th of May, I have to be in New Jersey. Someone else will do this. Maybe Jim, so. And, or Susie, somebody. And anyway, that next week is, did Albert Einstein affect a lasting legacy? Chris Bolt, mathematics professor emeritus, will discuss the legacy of Albert Einstein. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. The simple, unassuming manner of life is best for everyone, best for both the body and the soul. He'll argue that Einstein's contribution to America saved more lives in World War II than any other single individual. And it should be interesting anyway. That's next week. April 19th today, our speaker today is Hobie Hukill. He's an organizer, Dallas County Democratic Party, and MoveOn Dallas. He's going to discuss how a shadowy education reform group, ironically called Support Our Public Schools, SOPS, it probably should be Sabotage Our Public Schools, has suddenly launched a petition drive to remove the I from Dallas ISD by using an obscure state law passed in 1995. No school district in Texas has ever been turned into a home rule district under the terms of the law. Many, including Hobie, believe that should remain the case. Hobie Hukill will present an informative examination of this unprecedented power grab and a strong case for resisting it. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Hobie Hukill. It's all yours.
Thank you, sir. Okay, these mics are a little strange, so can you hear me okay? Good deal, good deal. Thanks a lot, Tom, for inviting me and allowing me to offer a few comments on this sort of breaking story. A little more on my background, just why you might want to listen to me or think I have something to say. I've been a teacher in Dallas ISD since 1996. My graduate degree is in educational psychology. I worked in the R&D Center for Teacher Education in Austin, affiliated with the University of Texas for a number of years, doing educational research. So education has been central to all of my life. I have also been a strong member of whatever labor union was available to join. And I am currently a member of Alliance AFT. So definitely I'm a partisan in that respect. I do believe that the people who do the work typically know best how to make the decisions that affect them. And so that's my prejudice, and that's the way I'm coming from, particularly with regard to this development. Now, what I'd like to do is informally present some information. Now, I have prepared a number of handouts that you can, I would encourage you to look at in detail. And I've also prepared a sheet with some references, some websites that you can go to. Yeah, you can go ahead and get those out. For the Democrats among us, you may be interested to know that the week after the SOPS came out with their petition drive, the State Democratic Executive Committee adopted the resolution that's going around. They roundly condemned this effort, and I think they explained pretty clearly why they disagree with it. What I'd like to do in this presentation, though, is give you a little bit more in the way of mechanics. What actually is supposed to occur under this law, how it's supposed to happen, and then what the implications are for us here in Dallas. One of my good friends came up with I think a great summary of what this amounts to. You will hear proponents of home rule saying, oh, this gives us a lot more local control. This will allow us to do what we want right here in Dallas. Well, in fact, this effort is, if you consider who's behind it, and if you consider what they actually seem to be planning to do, this is not so much a matter of local control as controlling the locals. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind as we go through here. There's also another good phrase that I'll use occasionally that I'm ripping off directly from Professor Julian Vasquez Heilig from the University of Texas. A great guy. I recommend that you check out his website, Cloaking Inequality. He calls much of what's going on here the illusion of inclusion. That is to say, although at a surface level, what's being proposed sounds like they're taking account of everybody's point of view and including everybody, in fact, what they're doing is simply putting a patina over essentially corporate control of our school districts. That's removing it from any semblance of democratic control. We'll get into that in a second too, because I guess what I would say here is when we're talking about Dallas ISD, you know the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I wish I could say that about Dallas ISD, but rather, I think what we should consider is if we're fixing it, don't break it again. And I think that's more what I would urge you to consider. That in fact, in spite of many, many obstacles and considerable controversy that I'd be happy to explore with you if you're interested after the initial presentation, Dallas ISD has actually done some astonishingly good work in spite of everything. And for this group to just kind of come out of nowhere and demand that all of these really substantial changes be undertaken because nothing's happening is simply wrong. It's just factually wrong. It also reveals a complete ignorance of how organizational change occurs and specifically how educational practice can be improved. If you've not been in front of a classroom, if you've not had the sort of the double-edged experience of inspiring young minds and contending with all of their resistance and all of their resentments and everything else that comes at you in an urban school district like we have, then you don't really know. You don't really understand. And I think it's significant that in this entire conversation that Citizen Mike Rawlings wants to have, teachers are not mentioned once except in terms of evaluation. Think about it. Look at what they say. They want to talk to everybody but teachers. And the only thing they want to do with teachers is slap us down with whatever hotshot, standardized, value-added instrument they can come up with. Whether or not it has any validity, whether or not it impacts education positively or not. We can also talk about that after the end. There's lots of other issues with regard to education that we can get into, but I've only got an hour, and you've only got a certain amount of patience. So let's return our attention now to what's coming at us right now, which is the effort to turn Dallas Independent School District into a home rule district. Tom is very kindly passing out quite a number of handouts. I urge you to follow along. I'll mention them as we go as needed. The origin of home rule district charters, and by the way, when we say home rule district charter, we are not talking about charter schools, although that may be involved. When we say charter, in this case, it is simply the detailed document that is adopted that specifies how this district is to be run. It has to be an incredibly detailed document. It is a charter of agreement with the state of Texas. Now, I was able, with the help of an attorney who's on my faculty at Samuel High School. By the way, I was a math teacher for 7 years. Then I am now serving as a school librarian at Samuel High School. So, you know, I've been here a while. The attorney looked at the House Research Organization and went all the way back to 1995 and got their analysis of this very law, the Home Rule document. It's part of a broader law, a Senate bill. Some of you may recall Kent Grusendorf. Anybody recall Kent Grusendorf from the Arlington area? Okay, Kent never met a teacher or a teacher organization he didn't hate. Kent was the actual author of this thing back in 1995. That was a full year before I even began with Dallas ISD. And in his far-sightedness, he wanted to protect districts from the terrible requirements being foisted on them by the state of Texas, such things as minimum or maximum class sizes. For elementary schools, 22-1, a minimum salary that districts would be required to pay teachers. Princely sum, of course, in Texas terms, but nonetheless, he felt that was onerous. He felt that with the oncoming reforms such as NCLB, No Child Left Behind, and other types of things percolating here in Texas, he wanted to protect districts from having to comply with the things they didn't want to. So there you have it. That's the genesis of this crazy law in the first place. HRD was designed to allow districts to opt out of many of the state requirements. It has some very high bars, though, to implement such a thing. 5% of the registered voters in a district have to sign a petition calling for the appointment of a commission, charter commission, or 2/3 of the district can be allowed to do that. That's called a trigger. Once that trigger has been pulled, that is to say, SOPS right now is undertaking to collect about 25,000 valid signatures within Dallas ISD. They will present them, presumably, to the board at some point. We don't know how many they've got now, but considering the tactics that they are using to collect these signatures, I have no doubt they will ultimately get them. They are using many paid employees to get it. They have the backing of John Arnold, who's a billionaire. We'll get into that a little bit later. They have plenty of money and a certain amount of time. Time may be their biggest enemy, but I think they'll make it. I have on good authority that individuals have been told, if you want to help teachers, sign this petition. If you want to improve the district, sign this petition. And most of the time they don't give the required disclaimer. They don't, in many cases, don't even check to see if someone's a registered voter. So that portends some problems for them later. We'll just see. After the trigger is pulled, then the board is required to appoint a charter commission of 15 individuals. 25% of them have to be teachers, but those teachers have to be selected by central staff. Okay, ever hear of teachers' pets? Well, these are the superintendent's pets, and he'll have no trouble finding those. They have a lot of TFAs that'll certainly fill that job perfectly fine. A majority must be parents of school-aged children in the district. Well, that may be a little more difficult for them, but nonetheless, I'm sure Lakewood and Preston Hollow and a few others can generate enough sympathetic parents out of those enclaves to fill it out. Mind you, these are appointed. We have no say over who they are. I dare say that the list is already made up. That's just me, you know. Anyway, once the commission is named, they have a year to write a charter. Now, we're not talking about just a little one-page document like we get as a contract as teachers. No, we're talking about a detailed, in-depth document specifying virtually every aspect of K through 12 education, how it's to be funded, how it's to be governed, how they plan to comply with certain state requirements that they will still be under, such as the graduation requirements and this sort of thing. What they will do instead of the state required curriculum in the cases where they choose to go somewhere different. It's a massive undertaking. We'll get back to that in a second, but understand, my suspicion is it's already been written. And I'll tell you why I think that in a moment. Once the charter has been written, it then has to be submitted to the Commissioner of Education for review to make sure that they've essentially dotted the I's and crossed the T's and have taken care of all of the basic requirements required of a school district here in Texas. Now, at that point, it is very likely that this, particularly if they call for a change in governance, and mind you, this is mainly what SOPS is saying. They're saying that we need to get a better school board here, an appointed school board. People who really know how to run things like a business. And so, if they propose a significant change in governance, chances are the Department of Justice and/or the DC District Court is also going to have to sign off on this thing, Because it's very likely that the changes they propose will run against or completely contradict the famous DSEG agreement that was made with Judge Barefoot Sanders. It could completely torpedo that, and who knows where that goes. But nonetheless, I mean, regardless of what you may think about the DSEG process or anything else, it stands as a serious issue in terms of moving forward with this thing. And nobody really knows how that's going to play out. If they get all of this approved, then there will be, the final charter will be put out for approval by the voters. And this is an election that requires participation of at least 25% of the registered voters in the district. And now that's around 123,000 individuals in that area. And a majority, simple majority, has to approve the charter. Okay, those are the basic mechanics of this process. Now, if the majority approves, it will be adopted. The Secretary of State will be required, I think, within 30 days to declare this a valid election and a valid change. Then we're totally in new territory. Now, as I said earlier, time is probably SOP's biggest problem. You know, they call themselves Save Our Public Schools. As Tom suggested, it's more like Sabotage Our Public Schools, or I might say more like Sell Our Public Schools. I'll give you a little background on who's involved here in a minute, and you can make your own mind up. However, the timeline is drastic, and this is probably going to cause them more heartburn than anything else. It's rare that you get that high a turnout, except for general elections such as we have in November. All right? So, unless they want to wait until the presidential elections, if they want to move on this thing fast, they need to get all these ducks in a row in time for the November election. That means 25,000 valid signatures submitted to the board, who then have approximately 30 days to appoint a commission, a 15-member commission, who then is given by law 1 year to draw up an incredibly detailed charter. This is why I think a sympathetic organization such as ALEC, perhaps, has already come up with a template charter. They've already got it ready to roll. Otherwise, this would be an impossible task. Simply an impossible task. Let's face it. You do not draw up a charter for a major urban school district in a month or two. Just not done. I don't care who's on the commission. And if any of y'all have participated in committees or commissions or anything else, you know what a smooth process that often is, right? So, anyway, my best guess is the commission's already drawn up and the charter's already written. That's my best guess. This is the only way they're going to get this thing done by November. It also assumes that the DOJ and the DC court and everybody else signs off on this thing. That's a big if. But folks, there is so much at stake here, I would not assume anything. I mean, if you're, after my presentation and looking this over, you decide this is really something that needs to be done, yeah, I would still be concerned. But for those of us who are absolutely diametrically opposed to this thing, we should never rest in our opposition. And we'll get into some of the things we can do later. But let's consider, first of all, I had mentioned who's involved. I'm going to steal shamelessly from my good buddy, Julian Vasquez-Heilig, who, by the way, shared this briefing paper with us at the Dallas Association of School Administrators last month. It was an unveiling, if you will, of this brief. This is a superb document. You have the website to go to, the web link to go to get your own copy. But I can't think of a better, succinct, to-the-point analysis of our situation here than this. It's called Home Rule Takeover Q&A. I'd just like to pull a few things out that I have not found anybody else mention here. He went to the trouble to actually do an analysis of really the money. Follow the money, you know? Well, he actually managed to do that pretty well, given the shadowy nature of the 501c4s. The fact that contributors to this process do not have to be publicly revealed. Fortunately, there is some notion of who's involved. 2 SOPS members sit on the boards of 2 local political action committees. Louisa Meyer is on Dallas Kids First, and Wilton Hollins is of Educate Dallas, and the Dallas Regional Chambers PAC. Since 2011, both PACs have donated money to political campaigns in Texas. And in the case of Educate Dallas, they donated between $3,000 and $32,000 exclusively to, guess what? DISD Board Trustees campaign. In fact, the last few Board of Trustees races have been record breakers. The Board of Trustees, mind you, do not get paid a 1 red cent. This is not a paid position at all. Most previous races have, credibly run, they are credible if they have been able to raise $15,000 or $20,000 to run in their district. And most people, such as Bruce Parrott and others who ran before successfully, that's about their budget. The person who beat Bruce paid $100,000 to do it. $100,000. We are talking now that these races have gone to the price tag of essentially a House of Representative race, a state district, House district race. Think about that. And these particular PACs have been right in the middle of that. Between the regional chamber and these PACs and others, they have consistently contributed on the order of $100,000 to their winning candidates. Now, part of the thing here is, you would say to yourself, well, heck, if they can just chunk in $100,000 for each candidate they want, why, they bought the board, what the heck? Aren't they satisfied with that? My only guess is they're tired of paying $300,000 a year to buy the board. They want a cheaper deal. Besides, I think they want direct access to the somewhat about $500 billion worth of real estate assets and the $1.5 billion annual budget. Now, we're almost talking real money there, aren't we? That might be part of the reason. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Yeah. Anyway, so clearly stated, the 8 candidates selected by the PACs to receive contributions won and now occupy all but 1 seat on the Board of Trustees. So yes, they bought the Board of Trustees. Clearly stated, Meyer and Hollins, 2 of the SOPS current board members, sit on the local political action committees that contributed thousands of dollars to the election and re-election campaigns of 8 out of 9 DISD trustees. All of the current board except Carla Ranger. Ka-ching, ka-ching. Okay, so yes, Citizens United and now the latest McCutcheon, and now McCutcheon has come home to roost right here in Dallas. So thanks to Julian Vasquez-Heilig for pointing this out, for drawing out these rather difficult, tenuous connections. One other person that we've mentioned before, John Arnold. I remember his name because I think of Benedict Arnold, and I say, yeah, okay, John Arnold. It's a great mnemonic. John Arnold was, among other things, a former trader of Enron. You know, that wonderful company that helped all of us get affordable energy, really helped California out in their times of stress. Yeah, John Arnold's a great guy, high level of ethics and public integrity, and certainly public service, yes. He's now a hedge fund manager, which of course places him in probably the top 10th of 1% of income across the country, the top 10th of 1%. He also is noted for his complete hostility to public worker pensions. He hates public worker pensions. Things that teachers get, things that firemen get, the police have gotten, you know, the public pensions that we contribute to, and, you know, it's sort of a half and half deal between us and the district, or a third. The state contributes a little bit too. As I say, Texas being what it is, these aren't exactly princely sums, but they are one thing: they are defined benefits. After working 40 years or so, you might actually get your full paycheck, right? Something like that. Some of us, like my wife and I, aren't going to get a full paycheck by any means, more like about 2/3 of our normal pay. And John Arnold hates that thought. He just cannot stand it. Because what's happening? Why, we're cutting out his good buddies, you know, the financial services industry. We're cutting out all the wonderful people who would get us involved in a 401k. And of course, they did really well back in 2007, didn't they? Yeah, they did a great job. Well, they did a great job for the financial services industries. Okay, so yeah, John's a great guy. Great guy. And he's the only public member of the cabal of billionaires and millionaires that's come out in support of this. Clearly there are others. We can speculate who they are, but you know, it's nothing official. So, by their fruits you shall know them, I suppose. Anyway, none of these people have distinguished themselves in terms of taking a side for, certainly not for teachers, and certainly not for the vast majority of our students who are afflicted primarily and most desperately by poverty. Every one of these individuals are affiliated with organizations that want to ignore that fact, obscure it, talk around it, and come up with a scapegoat to pillory rather than deal straight on with the issue of poverty, and that is teachers. Yes, we teachers are out there just sucking in a paycheck and lollygagging around and doing the New York Times crossword puzzles while 30 or 40 of our kids sit around and throw spitwads at each other, right? It's a great gig. I really recommend all of y'all do it. I mean, it's easy. Right, Tony? Yeah, it's no big problem. Judy, you know. Yeah, sure, this is good. So there we are, sitting around, parasites on the system, and SOPS wants to save all of y'all from us. Now, let's not forget, in addition to these individuals that I've already discussed, we also have Citizen Mike. You know, his day job is mayor, but I guess he's bored with that now. I think he wants to be SAR of Dallas and whatever that amounts to. I have a little anecdote regarding Mayor Mike, or Citizen Mike. His campaign manager, when he first ran, wanted to put me together with him to get to know him and perhaps come out in support of him. So I went up to his really hotshot office down there in Uptown, and we started talking. And the first thing out of this Pizza Hut executive's mouth was, well, I think we ought to just fire the lower 10% of all teachers every year. Just fire them. You know, I looked at him just dumbfounded. I mean, I'm a teacher in the trenches, and we are desperate to hang on to the decent, solid folk that we got. I mean, guess what? There are plenty of suburbs out there that are happy to take us. In fact, if you haven't noticed, there is a mass exodus of teachers that's been around certainly since Mike Miles came on board, and it continues. But no, he felt like what we need to do is just cut out the bottom 10%. My response to him was, that's incredibly wasteful. Why in the world would you want to take people who've, gotten here by hook or by crook, and that we've managed to get trained up, and maybe if they're having some trouble, we want to provide some support for them. But man, to just get rid of 10% at a whack, and also based on what? Utterly unreliable measures. This is not my time to go into great detail on this, but I can assure you right now, all of the fancy-dancy statistical measures that they use to evaluate teachers based on value-added models are a total crock. They are essentially random assignment. Flip a coin and you will get as reliable an assessment of a teacher. Heads they're good, tails they're bad. That's essentially what these hotshot deals are doing, and yet we're paying millions and millions of dollars to these statisticians to tell us what we think is something different. All right. Do not let me overlook our good buddy Mike Morath, who I've also had an opportunity to meet with on various occasions. See, they wanted to whack all of the school librarians a while back. We were able to organize ourselves and talk to some of the saner saner at that time, board members, and we were able to prevail. But during that process, I was able to get acquainted with old Mike Morath. He's a pleasant enough fellow in person. I mean, he certainly doesn't have horns and a tail or anything of the sort. But he is a bit of a wonderkind, I guess you could say. And why not? He's figured out that the best way to make a vast amount of money is to grab on to a publicly funded program and provide some and contract with it. So his millions comes from providing an application to Head Start schools around the state and around the country. And I have no problem with the application. It's probably perfectly functional, perfectly good, and that sort of thing. But what I have a problem with is that, he's standing up as if he's some sort of fantastic entrepreneur that's figured out something. What he's figured out is how to suck off our public good, our public funds. That's it. Hotshot, This somehow confers on him some great status, I guess. So again, this is rampant in our country. Y'all should check out Paul Krugman or Piketty or whoever else. We are, in fact, at Gilded Age levels of inequality and Gilded Age levels of domination by the uber wealthy. And this is just one example locally of what's going on. This is what's happening. Now, these are the who. I urge you to review the handouts that I put out to you. Definitely check out the websites there, because this is an evolving process. Let me get an idea. Have any of you been to any of the open discussions, open houses, or what they call them, town hall meetings that SOPS has sponsored on this subject? Have any of y'all been able to make any of those wonderful events? Let me give you just a quick vignette from the one I went to. I went to True Lee Church down around Fair Park, and they trotted out a couple of guys from the SOPS board, and they started with their PowerPoint talking about how horrible Dallas was, how horrible the Dallas ISD was. And they started putting some statistics and some charts up that really didn't square. They were subtle, they were not obvious, but they were, somebody who actually knew the subject, such as Bill Betson, or such as the principal from Skyline, who was sitting right behind me, noted that these statistics were skewed in such a way to present the absolute worst picture possible. many of our kids have trouble making it through school, but although we have some who can't graduate in 4 years, we have a huge proportion that actually graduate within 5. Well, did they reflect the 5-year graduation rate? Absolutely not. They kept it at 4. Okay? Now, other types of skullduggery were embedded in much of their so-called analysis. I recommend that you look there at Bill's quite detailed and perhaps cross-eye making analysis. Let me see, do I have that? Yeah, there we go. Good. This is the one. Bill Betson is a former teacher and has his own blog and does really good statistical work on outcomes, particularly graduation rates and things like that SOPS is so alarmed about. Well, what Bill's main point is that, in fact, under Hinojosa, whatever you may think of Hinojosa, Michael Hinojosa, our previous superintendent, by hook or crook, we managed to increase our graduation rate. We managed to, increase our overall level of achievement in many measures. Nobody's jumping up and down for joy about this thing, but given everything that we have to deal with and the decades-long defunding of our school system, it's astonishing that we've been able to do what we did, that we were able to do what we did. Now, all that progress apparently stopped when Mike Miles came on board. It looks like he's imposing the same kinds of patterns that we see in his former school district up in Harrison, up in Colorado. Again, we can get into Miles and all of that stuff. I'm not here to debate or even make take a strong stand on Miles in detail, simply to say I think he has been bad for this district in many ways. On the other hand, it's really bizarre that the very people that brought Mike Miles to us, Mr. Bold Disruptor himself, is now, I don't know, being thrown under the bus by them? Much of what these people are citing as the cause for great concern and need for immediate action, this information has been around forever. The trends have been there for years, as you can see with Bill's work. And they brought Miles in because they were so concerned. And so I guess the question is, well, so after what, 6 months or 9 months or something like that, or a little over a year, you're not satisfied with what Miles is doing, and so suddenly you want to just totally take over everything? It's a weird situation. It's a strange question, and they've never addressed it. Miguel Solis will not address it. Nobody will address it. But I think it's something people need to keep pounding on whenever they can. Now, what does SOPS say? Let's just... Here's what I got at the little town hall meeting they had. It's nice and slick. Allen, the ad agency, Allen, the same ones that gave us the underwater tollway, the Save Our Trinity, Vote No, that Allen group, they're the ones running this ad campaign for SOPS. So yeah, they're a good group. Lots of ethics. Yeah, you can really trust them. Take them to the bank. You can certainly take them to the bank. All right. In all of this verbiage, I'll pass it around. In all of this verbiage, about the only thing that you can glean is that somehow changing the governance structure of DISD is going to make a difference. You will find almost no concrete proposals here. It's all totally vague, but trust us. Just trust us. As Rawlings unfortunately said one time, it's a blank page. Well, it's not really blank. I think it's all of the blanks have been filled in already. But This is the sort of thing that they put out. I'll pass this around if y'all get it back to me. It's my only copy. I think the best way to describe it is just vapid. And these are not stupid people. They did it for a reason. They did not want us to have anything concrete to work on or to challenge. I've already mentioned the board races, and I'll just remind you again, you know, the question of why now, why are they pushing this so crazy right now, you know, really has to be addressed. I think they really didn't plan to have their great petition drive exposed. I think maybe Adam Madrano or somebody babbled a little too much at the wrong time to the wrong person, and voila. Their idea was to go to the primaries, to the voting places where everybody was gathering for primaries, and get a whole bunch of suckers to sign this petition to improve Dallas ISD. I mean, who can object to that? And get their 25,000 signatures right there, right then. Apparently that didn't exactly work out so well. And in the process, the project became public knowledge. This was right around March. About a week later, much to their credit, the State Democratic Executive Committee adopted this detailed resolution that I think all of y'all have. I hope you do. Does somebody not have a copy? This resolution, I think, lays it out just about as well as anybody. Maybe not in the level of detail that you might like, but it lays it out. I mean, this is the Dallas version of a national effort to privatize public education. They cannot stand the notion that folks like us might actually have some level of impact on how our public schools that we pay for are run. They just can't stand it. It drives them crazy. And you know, I've mentioned the $500 billion real estate assets and the $1.5 billion budget and this kind of thing. And yes, I think economic considerations are definitely important. And I think that certainly drives a lot of these people. But you know what else really drives them? I mean, this is what I think about the Koch brothers. This is what I think about, you know, the uber rich in general. I think it's a matter of power. They just cannot stand the idea of sharing any smidgen of power with us. I mean, we've already seen, thanks to Julian Vasquez-Heilig and the others, that heck, they bought the dang board, right? They bought them. But that's just not direct enough control for them. That's not how you run a business, you know? That's not how you run a business. You know? You gotta actually appoint your people and keep them to the grindstone and fire that bottom 10%. Just fire them. Yeah, that's the American way. Well, I mean, seriously, this is ridiculous, but I mean, again, this is totally me speaking, you know, personal privilege here, but I think something along those lines is really the why. It's underlying the why of this effort. Morath or somebody discovered this crazy little law that wonderful Kent Grusendorf had stuck in back in '95 and decided, well, let's run with it. You know, as I say, it's consistent with the national pattern as described in the SDEC resolution, but it's very specific to Dallas. And they do have their work cut out for them. Even if everything goes their way, it's still not a done deal. I would like to point out at this juncture the TOP chart, right? And I want to credit TOP with their hard work in putting together a number of good items, a number of good position papers on this very topic. They've been extremely active in developing opposition here. So this is not just me, this is certainly not just any one organization. Bunch of folks have jumped in. Alliance AFT, NEA, TOP, we've got DFPE, we've got Keep Our Schools Public, we've got tons of organizations who are jumping in and helping with this. But TOP did a great job. A very succinct little chart here, and let's just look it over. Why do we really need home rule? What really does it do for us? Well, there you go. Look at it. Nobody's saying that we don't need more after-school programs. Nobody's saying that we don't need more support for bilingual education. And frankly, we need a whole lot of improvement in that area. Extended school days, extended school year. Talk to Six Flags about that extended school year, please. Or starting earlier than the last week in August. Talk to Six Flags and the rest of the amusement park lobby that forced that stupid law on us in the first place. Frankly, we can get a waiver from it if we want, if they really wanted. Preschool for every child, nobody objects to that. And so on. Disciplinary policies that keep more students in school and out of jail, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. SOPS doesn't say a word about anything specific here. What they do is let us fill in those blanks. They know many of us are not exactly satisfied with the level of progress in many of these dimensions. And they encourage us to make this little leap from what's going on right now to, oh, here's the silver bullet. Here's the fix. Home rule. Turn to home rule and by God, all these problems are dealt with. They're perfectly fixed. Oh, really? Folks, in point of fact, the only thing that home rule allows that cannot be accomplished any other way is this one right here. Non-elected school board members. Change in governance. And if you listen carefully, that's what they talk about most. Oh, we just need to change the way that we govern this district. That's what they're really about. Just appoint them. Let's put in an accountant, somebody that we know. Let's put in a lawyer or two. And then let's hold them accountable. So that, whoever's down there in 9, some of the other districts that are dominated by, let's put it this way, have no enclaves of upper middle class citizenry at all. Well, that's going to guarantee that those poor folks are constantly running for re-election because those kids don't achieve at the same standardized level as the rest. I told you I have a research background, and they sent out a table of all of the high schools' ACT scores. Unfortunately, I haven't included in the handouts, but I can give you the short version. I correlated the ACT averages. The ACT score is it's one of the measures of college readiness that the seniors take mostly. I correlated the high school average with the latitude of the high school. I'll let that sink in for a second. The latitude. I took it out to 4 digits from south to north. And guess what? I showed that when you go from south to north, you increase those ACT scores. The level of confidence of that correlation was well over 0.00001. In other words, you don't get things like that by accident. It was an incredibly powerful and incredibly significant finding that yes, something as simple as how far south versus how far north you are determines what score on the ACT your kids are going to get. And we're blaming teachers? And now they want to blame whatever poor sucker, is stuck in there as a board of trustees, director there? Oh, really? How ridiculous. How absurd. But that's what we got. Anyway, The best I can say is why they want total control, and they want it now. It's as simple as that. It's a power grab, sweet and simple. Now, I have mentioned that they... Sir? Oh, sorry. Okay. And I'm just about out. Well, I'm running down here pretty quick. This is good. Years before the classroom. All right. They do have a couple of problems. First of all, the timeline is brutal. First, they have to get 25,000 valid petition signatures. And as I've already mentioned, many of the petition signatures that they've garnered are by no means valid. And AFT has put out an affidavit, for example, that people can submit who've already signed that stupid thing saying, I want my signature removed. If we get enough of those submitted, certainly that's going to delay the validation process. They have to be registered voters inside the district. Judy, you signed their petition, right? You're in our ISD, aren't you? All right, there you go.
See if they followed their rules at the library.
No way.
Didn't follow any of them.
Yeah, so we can anticipate whatever they submit is probably going to be a bunch of junk, and chances are at that stage that process is going to be slowed down big time. I believe we probably have a few organizations and lawyers and what have you that probably can get some injunctions going at that stage. If they blow the timeline at that point, that probably knocks them out of the November election. But going forward, obviously then, if they happen to be valid and if they get them in by approximately June or so, then the board can pull out its list that it's already developed, already been given, of the 15-member commission. And the 15-member commission will then be given the charter that's already been written, and they can rubber stamp it and do whatever diddling they want to do with that. They have to get it to Michael Williams down in Austin for a 30-day review. And in order to get that thing done and back and on the ballot, they have to have it, all of that signed, sealed, and delivered. And we're also talking DOJ, we're also talking possibly the district court. All of that has to be done by certainly end of August. 19th of August, okay. 19th of August. That's a very short timeline, even for billionaires. Even for billionaires. So we'll see. We will see what we shall see on that score. It may not come to fruition this point around, but I wouldn't put it past them. And what I will tell you is, going forward, if you're convinced by my presentation, if you're convinced by what you've read here and what you continue to see, then our best bet right now is to urge people to not sign the dang petition. First of all, just don't sign it. It's enemies that are putting this thing out. If people have signed it, they need to get their hands on an affidavit and take their name off officially. It has to be notarized. It's kind of a process, but it's worth it. What else? Pressure your city council person. I must say, Carolyn Davis is my council person, and good for her. She nailed Rawlings. She said, Mayor Rawlings, why are you pushing this when you just brought in Mike Miles to make all the changes you thought we needed to make? You know, you're causing real trouble here. Why are we doing this? Also, why in the heck is the city council even involved? Monica Alonso, if any of y'all are in her area, she's not at all happy with this. I've talked to Roberto Alonso, her brother. He's asked me to speak on behalf of this at MAD. So we need to get the word out to our own constituencies. However, whoever trusts us, whoever listens to us, get that word out. Tell them not to sign, and tell them that whatever comes up in November has to be voted down. Don't even think about passing that thing. What happens if they submit those petitions, if they are approved, folks, that's way out of our hands. We have no control over who's appointed. We have no control over what's in the charter. We have no control of any sort. They love to talk about conversation, but it's a lot like, you know, the Israelis talking peace while they're putting more and more settlements on the West Bank. You know, it's sort of like, well, Yeah, you can talk till you're blue in the face, but that's not what's going on here. The petitions are being gathered now. So we need to prepare ourselves to nail this thing in November, if it comes to that. And it's going to be hard. And there's going to be a lot of stuff on the other side coming at us to make us feel wrong about that. So I urge you to just keep up the good work, stay in touch with those of us who are fighting this, and as things develop, we'll certainly be trying to keep y'all informed. That's my presentation.
Now you get to answer questions.
Ah, good. Another question. A question over there. Talk loud.
Hobie, they're trying to test this out in DISD for a reason, right? But it would be just as simple for them if it fails in DISD to go someplace like MISD or Plano ISD or any other larger urban city that would be more likely to support it. So, you know, I don't think it's an accident that this, you know, somebody stumbled across this 1995 law that was passed. I don't think that's an accident at all.
Absolutely.
But do you have any comments about next steps and, you know, what to watch out for?
Yeah, that's a really good point. We definitely suspect, like I say, this is part of a national pattern. Jason Villalba's involvement here is not a mistake. He's going down to the legislature. Rumor has it that one of their agenda items for the next session will be to make this process a whole lot easier. A whole lot easier. Okay? So yeah, I think they're contemplating broad-based, wide diffusion of this tactic. I mean, what the heck? They could privatize all of these districts. If they privatize Houston and Dallas and San Antonio, Austin, teacher retirement system will go bust because they will create such churn in the teacher ranks. Nobody's going to want to stay for the kind of terrible. I mean, they're hard to stay. It's hard to stay right now. Imagine what folks would be doing at that stage. TRS now has about a 70-year projected life right now. It'll probably go down to maybe 15 or 20. And John Arnold loves that. Okay, thanks. Yes, ma'am.
I was also wondering, I read in the newspaper that they could divide Dallas into several smaller districts. I was wondering if one of their goals here is to resegregate Dallas.
Well, you know, that's certainly why we mentioned the Department of Justice review and the District Court review. No doubt that's part of the issue. We don't know exactly where that's going to go or how that's going to go. They have to play a very careful game with the South Dallas ministers. I don't think they've prevailed down there, although some have gone over the dark side, but others are standing very firm against it. And I think that's a very dicey question for them. Like I say, this is not a slam dunk for them yet under these circumstances, but it's a good point. We got a question over here, or Judy? Oh,
I just wanted to make you all aware of the fact I'm Judy Bryant, and Hobie and I are on founding members and on the board of a group called Dallas Friends of Public Education. And I noticed on this information sheet, instead of putting the DFPE website, you put the blog again.
Oh, I did.
So I wanted to make you aware of this right here on this that has Home Rule District Resource List. Under where it says Dallas Friends of Public Education, it should be www.dfpe.org.
Man, that cut and paste will kill you.
www.dfpe.org.
Yeah.
And I wanted to tell you that just now, we got an email about an hour ago from our DFPE president, Mike McNaughton. If you all go to vote early or do anything and you notice these signs that say Save Our Public Schools, please protest at the place where you are. Because on the DFPE site, if you go home and look at that, there are improper SOPS signage at the Preston Royal Library that were placed on either side of the entrance to the library.
Yeah.
And that no signage of any kind, as we all know who work in elections, are allowed within, how many feet is it of the polling place?
100 feet.
100 feet.
Yeah.
So they did finally remove these, but we can go out and challenge any of these kinds of things that we see happening and, you know, give them some grief about it because, like Hobie said, they thought they were going to just do this silently and get away with it. And
if you see, you probably won't run across them because they're hard to find, but if you run across a petition driver, give them grief. You'll ask them, first of all, how much they're being paid. Ask them how much they're being paid. Very, very few are actual volunteers. And then see if they know anything at all about this issue. You'll find they don't. Yes, sir.
Do you think that this, I'm sorry, I got here late, I got lost coming here. Do you think that this is part of the overall UN principle of creating public-private partnerships? In other words, taking nonprofit functions of government and putting them in the hands of a private company to make profit, hence costing us more.
Well, I'm not sure I attribute that directly to the UN. We're doing that perfectly well here in the United States. That is certainly a pattern that I think you see a lot. Where, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Mike Morath's own company contracts essentially with the U.S. government to provide software services for Head Start programs. And this seems to be the trend. The uber wealthy in this country, I'll go that far. The uber wealthy in this country want control. That's what's going on. Yes, sir. Okay, there we go. And then
one of my concerns is that there are so many parents in the district who don't speak English, and I can envision them being approached by the wrong person, playing up to the fact that perhaps their kids are not getting all the services that the parents think they're entitled to or need, et cetera, et cetera. And if you are disingenuous enough to have a title called Save Our Public Schools, and you approach someone, possibly in their native language saying, would you like to save the Dallas ISD schools? Sign here. It's a very scary proposition.
Right.
What is anybody doing to, address this issue in languages other than English?
Well, I speak Spanish. A number of the folks involved do as well. I've arranged with Roberto Alonso to make a presentation to his Mexican American Democrats group, and I will, of course, do all I can. And this is spreading. Monica certainly among her circle doesn't want to see this happen. But I've got to tell you, this is like chasing cockroaches. It would be great if we could bird dog every single one of these individuals, but that's just simply not going to be possible. Which makes us retrench and say, okay, at a minimum, let's get the word out on this. Let's make this socially unacceptable to go along with. However dissatisfied we may be with what's going on in Dallas ISD, and I'll be the first to step in that line, under no circumstances do we turn it over to the hedge fund managers. Okay? Anybody? Someone else over here? Got a question here?
You mentioned that one option we may have is Justice Department getting involved or the district judge.
Possible.
But that's really a stretch possibility based on the pre-clearance thing that the Supreme Court did.
Yeah, it's as I say, we should not take anything for granted. That may pose an obstacle to them, but it's by no means a sure deal. It's simply, I think more directly along those lines is the possibility that the charter they come up with will actually violate very specific terms of the DSEG agreement. And that could be a problem for them, much more so than the pre-clearance issue.
I found this appalling that we were trying to do it because they haven't said anything about making the schools better.
No.
And so I just can't understand how parents would buy off on something like that. If you're going to change a system, there ought to be evidence that it's going to be better.
Right. Well, they have very astutely, very cleverly leveraged the high level of dissatisfaction and resentment and discontent around the district to a knee-jerk reaction that just says, throw them all out, turn it over to our good hedge fund managers. They know how to run a business. And they won't even say it out loud like that. But they're banking on understandable levels of dissatisfaction and resentment, even in spite of the serious progress we've made, to push this thing over the top. And we've got to stand in the way of that.
I just wanted to make some comments.
Think about it. Think about it.
Do you think that they are using petitioners from other states to come in to have people sign petitions?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. Yeah, like I said, they're paid petitioners. They I don't know, put it out on Monster.com or whatever else. Yeah, you've got people. One woman, I believe, was Judy talked to or somebody did from Florida. She didn't know jack. Yeah, okay, Martha. Okay, didn't know jack about the issues. Was being paid to per $1 for every signature, and I can tell you they are being. Oh, it's $2 because it's hard because people like us are having some impact, But yeah, she knew nothing of the issues, and she really couldn't care less. She thought this was relatively easy compared to the one she was doing in Florida, though. Anyway,
what do you think is our best strategy as far as defeating this?
What we're doing right now, what I'm doing right now, what each of you can do in your own ways, in your churches and your social groups, and just personally on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever you do, you say, oh, by the way, don't sign that stupid petition. I mean, you don't have to go into long, drawn-out, spiel. Be yourself. But we need to make this a socially unacceptable thing to do. And for those that said, oh, darn, I've already signed the thing, say, well, you can take your name off, just sign, find an affidavit, get it notarized, and submit it to Dallas ISD. They'll take it over. I think DFPE probably has it, and I think AFT does.
I meant to bring some forms with me.
Okay.
We have them in our office. So,
can y'all get them posted on a PDF?
in fact, I think they're already posted online.
Alliance-aft.org.
Alliance-aft.org.
Yeah.
Alliance-aft.org.
Yeah.
And you can get those affidavits.
Question? Okay, you've got the stick.
All right, I've been listening to a lot of this, and something that was mentioned earlier today is that we have not heard from the cities around Dallas that are part of the Dallas ISD. They're very suspiciously quiet. Is there anything that we should do or what we should attend to?
Well, in general, as Susie pointed out, this is something that is not probably going to go away. This is something that folks all over are probably going to have to contend with one way or another. So I would start raising the issue. Now, in those small sections of the suburbs that are included in Dallas ISD, those individuals, if you happen to know anybody in that situation, urge them to do not, sign the petition, and to absolutely vote against any charter that comes out in November if it does. But raise the flag, because it's going to be coming back at us, I suspect. Yes, sir?
Well, you and your organization are real convincing and passionate and energetic about this. And what is it? What threat is it that you see that is some horrible fate that is going to befall you or your group, or even the Dallas ISD? What is your interest in this? Why would you even be involved?
Several layers to that question. First of all, I'm a citizen of Dallas. I'm a citizen in Dallas ISD, meaning I pay a couple of $1,000 a year in taxes to this entity. Okay, understood. But let me, hear me out. So this is fundamentally an issue of taxation without representation, a very basic principle of democracy. Under the terms of an appointed board, we no longer have any direct control. Now, I've already discussed how the current board is bought and sold, right? But under a home rule provision, we would not even have the theoretical possibility of mounting an electoral challenge to these individuals. It would be very much more like up in Michigan, where they've got these state-appointed city managers that completely run roughshod over any of the elected officials. I don't want hedge fund managers with direct access to taxing authority. I don't want them with direct access to the $500 billion worth of real estate assets that we've managed to put together over decades and decades. And I sure don't want them to have direct access to the $1.5 billion of taxes. That's at a basic level. Perhaps at a more theoretical or a more general level, this is a direct attack on democracy. That bothers me. That bothers me big time. Big business is not democratic. It is fundamentally anti-democratic. And we need to understand that, and this is what's happening right now, right here. So that's why I'm standing in opposition to this. Now, if you want to say, oh, well, you're a teacher, so, clearly you'd be against it, like Morath likes to talk about adults. Yeah, he constantly will talk about, well, these are adults talking about adults. Well, folks, let me give you an alternative way of looking at this. If an airline pilot says that he should not be required to fly more than 12 hours because he gets a little groggy after 12 hours, as a passenger, are my interests being involved there or not? Or is that whiny, parasitic pilot just looking out for himself? Huh? It's the same thing with teachers. Folks, our working conditions are classrooms. They are the learning conditions of our children. When we're advocating for smaller class sizes, when we're advocating for higher qualifications for teachers, you think that's just because we're whiny parasites trying to get the very best deal we possibly can? No, it's because we know what works for our kids. So try to avoid these lines of argument that Morath and the rest of them spew out there. Yeah, it's adults, duh. In loco parentis. You're a parent, many of you. You're supposed to speak for your children. You're supposed to advocate for them. Are you going to be blown off because your children aren't making advocacy statements? How ridiculous. How absurd. Leave it to Morath to come up with something like that. Anyway, I don't mean to completely, come at you with all guns blazing, but there's an issue here that somehow we are just as corrupt and venal as the other side. And I utterly reject that notion. Utterly reject it. It's a character slander, and I won't stand still for it. Okay.
Do you think that control of at the local level of the schools is intrinsically bad compared to the way it's done now?
That's a heck of a question. That's a heck of a question. Because, and really it gets to a very existential question. As human beings, are we individuals or are we part of a group, a part of a community, a family? It's the age-old issue of the paradox facing us as humans. We're both. You know, we are both. We are a district that has citizens that interact not only just right there in their own little school, but also around the city, also around the county. They have friends and family elsewhere. There's business that's conducted all over the place, etc., etc., etc. We are indeed global. Now, as I said at the very outset, I'm a labor kind of guy. I'm a labor Democrat. I believe that those who do the work make the best decisions about the things that affect them in their work. And I think that that's a principle that can apply all the way up and down. Meaning, I don't think Mike Miles has any business telling me how to conduct my class because I'm a professional teacher. He might say, you need to cover this material. You need to try to make sure you hit these marks. You know, I want to make sure that you've got good HVAC and all this other stuff, and you need to make sure that your kids do a good job, that sort of thing. It's interactive. It's not a simple question, and there's no simple answer for it. I think we need both. Now, Common Core curriculum is a total monstrosity. Not because several states have gone in to adopt it, but because of the way it's been implemented prematurely. Nobody knows how to do it, and it's being saddled with outrageous levels of testing that have nothing to do with instructional integrity. But that's a whole nother issue. Yeah. Pearson, Sandy Kress, remember Sandy? He's still here. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
I'm sure if they put enough money into it, they should be able to get the signatures they are requesting. However, it also sounds like you might be on the verge of being able to come up with a delay strategy.
That may happen.
I would highly recommend pursuing that. There's one other thing that I would also recommend here, at least for your consideration. Be interested to see what you'd say. Reaching across the aisle.
Yeah.
The Republican Party is not a monolithic thing.
Absolutely.
There are the rich elite at the top who seem to control it many times, but there's also a very large and growing libertarian segment.
Correct.
And the last thing they would be interested in is having something where there's control through election to be appointment.
Right.
And I think you have a very strong issue there.
I concur, and to the extent possible, we're certainly seeing that happen. By the way, just to reiterate, we feel like it's not a matter of local control; it's a matter of controlling locals. That's what this effort is. It's not legitimately local control. It's elites taking it away from the rest of us.
I think.
It seems in this country you have a cabal at the top that are bound and determined to buy Congress and buy everything.
Yeah.
Do you believe, deep down, this is an attempt really to control the public education and dumb it down even further?
Dumbing it down may or may not. Well, that may be a side effect of what they're doing, but absolutely yes. Public education from its very beginning has always been a matter of conflict, an object of conflict. Many of the folks that I respect call it that's where class warfare occurs. That's where, the actual opposition is fought out. And this is why public education seems so bizarre, seems so crazy sometimes, because in fact, what we see there is a result of very serious conflict. Unfortunately, right now, it's not a very even playing field. The uber rich, are pretty well dominating, and they're pressing their advantage. And as far as I can see, there's nothing really standing in their way except for little efforts like this.
Do you think they can control, well, if they ever got control of the board? Well, they have it now. But do you think they can? The bottom line is they want to control the curriculum.
Certainly. Oh, certainly. You know, I mean, any dominant regime wants control of ideological formation, and that's for better or for worse. I mean, you can have a benign regime; they still want to bring their kids up right. You know, parents want to bring their kids up right, and frankly, that means instilling values. You know, not necessarily in an inauthentic or tyrannical way, but nonetheless, as social human beings, we have a stake in agreeing what needs to be inculcated and supported. Absolutely, the super rich want docile workers. They want compliant, docile workers first and foremost. And whatever they need to get that, they'll get.
And this is part of it.
I think so. I do believe so. I think it's just, that's their class interest.
I just have a question about this chart. Here.
Oh, TOPS chart? Yeah.
Yeah, it says that in DISD, that disciplinary policies could keep more students in school and out of jail if home rule proceeds are passed, or SOPS is passed. So I've heard of instances, and I don't know if they were in Texas or elsewhere in the U.S., where students faced criminal
sanctions,
prosecution for offenses like assault and battery, or possibly even truancy or things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so how would in this case SOPS relate to that issue?
Well, I think what TOPS is getting at, and this is a very complicated issue. It's very nuanced, and I'm happy to explore it with you. But just the short answer is, under a new charter, they would not be obligated to employ or seek out disciplinary policies that benefit at-risk youth. There are a number of programs that provide support and counseling for kids who are acting out, who are, troubled, who are hard to handle in a classroom. Well, those aren't criminals. Those are troubled kids, often troubled by the massive amount of poverty and the consequences of the poverty that they exist in. We need support for them, and there are programs for that. Under this a new regime would not be obligated to make any outreach there. They would simply pick the most efficient things. No tolerance, no tolerance. They love to say that. Criminalize those that aren't compliant. It's very simple.
Just to follow up on that, they wouldn't be obligated to follow the law.
Right into it.
They are, just to follow up on that, they would not have to follow the state-mandated Safe Schools Act, okay, which determines discipline in the school district.
Right. They could blow off a lot of the mandates, but
what I don't understand is how that would come head to head with the national policy on free appropriate public education.
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? No one does. And that's perhaps another possible glitch in their effort. But that's a long way down the road, and the charter would already be in place. At some point, someone would have to raise a legal challenge to it at some considerable costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, we can come up with a lot of logical contradictions to this effort, but the practice may be harder to proceed with. It's better not to vote for it, to vote it down and back it off.
Has this type of thing already been accomplished somewhere? Never. So this is a brand new idea that they just pulled out of somewhere.
That's right, Dallas, world-class city.
Oh, good. Let's
Cutting edge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chicago mayor points
Well, there are certainly variations on this theme, but where this is particularly useful is in weak mayor cities like Dallas, like much of the West, where the mayor is simply an at-large council member. Yeah, up in Chicago and certainly Bloomberg and in New York and some of the other, New Orleans, oh yes, New Orleans. Wherever you have a strong mayor system, you have many instances where this type of appointed governance is already in place, and it's pretty devastating. Yeah, and Michigan. Oh, yes, Michigan for sure.
Any more questions? I think you're going to get to sit down.
Amazing. Well, folks, this has been enlightening. I'm glad you forced me to put this together. I hope it was helpful. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Spread the word.
Now they get to talk.
Yeah.
You get to respond.
Right.
But you get to eat now. Yeah, with a full mouth. Now it's your turn to talk. So, any rebuttals or any remarks for or against what he had to say? It's your turn to get up here and say whatever you want to say. So, who wants to be first? There's got to be a first. He did such a good job. Nobody's going to talk. I can't believe this. Here's one. All right.
This is supposed to be a rebuttal, but I really don't have much to say in rebuttal for what the speaker said. Where did he go? Where's he sitting? Ah, there you are. Great. Just wanted to have eye contact. Albert brought up the UN and especially this phrase Agenda 21. And I had an experience back in the 90s working for a former defense planner, and I was complaining about something the UN was doing, and he said, "Why are you worried? We control the UN." I'm like, who's we? I don't control the UN. Well, at his level, they do control the UN. And again, it's the elite. It's the financial elite, or perhaps the military elite. And this is the thing, the UN has been used for a tool. And I think we need to be very careful what the UN, what comes from the UN. I think there may be a little disparity between right and left as to how benign the UN is, but I would urge everyone to look at UN programs, and especially the minutes, the things they discuss, and so forth like that, because it's a very good way of divesting us of our form of government, which, from my perspective, is a republic with a democratic process. And it really, we need to hold on to that democratic process wherever we can, because it's really the voice of the people. Even though we get into this dispute, well, is it the individual or is it the collective or the community? There's a lot of difference between collective and community. It's a very subtle difference. I am very supportive of community, but when you start talking collective, you're talking about sacrificing a certain amount of something to participate, to be on the same page in a collective. And every collective has to have a voice. Someone has to direct that collective. I'd rather have a community of individuals coming together and through working with each other be coming to solutions to local problems. Almost every problem I know of is really worked at better on the local level. And some of my most liberal friends, my San Francisco email buddies that I talk with, we agree on issues such as distributed processing. Why are we having stuff brought from all over the world that we could produce here locally? And I think that especially with some of the advances with these 3D printing things and so forth, I think we could see a revolution here if we can just keep the vote with the people, if we can maintain a voice and not be giving our voice away to appointed officials. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Is there going to be a next? I can't believe this. Oh, here we go. Al Holman.
When Al gets up there, I want you to sound the trumpet.
I am not ascending. Yet. As I recall, the United States used to be rated right up close to number one, if not number one, in educational quality in the world. And today, as I understand, we're way down at least in the 40s. Now, what's happened? The federal government has gotten bigger and more powerful. Control has gone farther and farther away from local control. Control of the educational system and every governmental service should never, ever be allowed to seep into private hands. And if you look up, John Gentry has a DVD on this. Joan Vion studied the UN for years, went to meetings all over the world. In 1985, she was at the Rio conference where they introduced the term public-private partnership. And that's where these super wealthy people go in and make a deal with the local government. Those people probably get bought off pretty well, to turn the water company or the power company or the school or now the prisons, as we see, over to private what? Roads as well. We're having the roads. Yeah. Toll roads are totally unconstitutional. They're a restriction on your right to travel. It takes a constitutional amendment to restrict that at all. And those things have been held numerous times at the Supreme Court level, but they're never carried down to the local level. Everyone who cares about their kids needs to be active in the school system and observing that school system. Frankly, I think when a teacher gets, what is a teacher's salary today in a high school? Any idea? I don't know. Yeah, well, that's nothing like $400,000 a year for like Hinojosa used to get. Now, you know, this is happening in corporations. This is happening in schools. The college tuition rates today are out of the roof, and here you have presidents of colleges taking home $500,000 a year, maybe $1 million. Coaches, everything. It's just this greed and lust for power that I've mentioned over and over and over, a rampant virus in human consciousness is taking over. I think I'm going to recommend that everybody go to the YouTube and look up ringingcedarsthetree.com. And you can get a DVD called The School. There is a school in Siberia that the students designed and built, and it's not slipshod at all. It's well done. The students wrote all of their own textbooks. The students teach all of their own classes, and the students complete an entire year, an entire 4 years of high school in 1 year, very successfully. They study one subject at a time thoroughly. In other words, they'll sit down and take arithmetic and go all the way through it. Then they'll take algebra and go all the way through it, and then somewhere along the road they'll take Russian and go all the way through. Whatever the subject, it's one subject at a time until it's completed. There are ringingcedars.com is the website, and the DVD you can get is The School. Our educational system is very, very poor. You know, there are just simple little techniques that the school system will never address, and also because they're trying to do everybody the same, not everybody operates the same. I'll give you one example. The lady I was married to for years, whom I still miss, unfortunately we were children so we couldn't solve it. But nevertheless, when she was in school and a math problem was put on the board and they were told to work out the math problem, she would just look at the wall and she would see all these colored blocks move around like that, and then the answer would appear and she'd write it down. And it frustrated the heck out of her teacher. And all she knew was she just turned the problem over to that. Always got the right answer. Finally, the teacher, out of frustration, wanted her to do the procedure, and after making her do the procedure, she lost the ability to use the dots, the colored lights. That should have been something where the teacher should have said, tell me about this. I want to learn about this, because that is a gift beyond what they teach in the textbooks. And there are many of those gifts, and we stifle them. And the stifling puts everybody, kind of stuff them in a can, and it's like, I forget who mentioned, we are being trained to operate in this slot and that slot and that slot. If you really look at some of the lectures on the YouTube given about UN Agenda 21 and see what they plan to do, it is atrocious. Part of it is cut back world population to a maximum, or they say under 500 million people. How are they going to do that when it's 7.5 billion? This is one of their principles. These people who run this planet are not nice people at all. But they put forth all this language that sounds good, and then you have to delve into it. Joan Vion pointed out it took her years to understand what sustainable meant. And sustainable was getting to the 500 million people. That's what the UN meant by that. The higher the control level, the less control you have. If you trust your federal government to do a good job in education, you're insane. I'm sorry. Look at history. These people who pay the money, who've got the billions of dollars to buy off everybody in Congress, whoever they want total control of you. And that means your mind is set in a way that you are not a creative thinker. And if creative thinking is not taught in school, that school needs to be changed or shut down, in my opinion. Creative thinking is the most valuable thing we have, and encouraging people to use their own diverse talents, because we are capable of far more than the imagination for most people. I mean, we have abilities that people think you're crazy when you hear about other people experiencing some of these abilities. And these things need to be encouraged, because what is in our consciousness was given to us by the Creator, and if we are made in that image, we have abilities we haven't even scratched the surface of. I would like to see an educational system that is more probing into the unusual and is more encouraging of individual talents that are totally different from the textbook. And since I'm being told that I need to shut up now, I will say bye.
Okay, who's next? There has to be a next. I don't see a next. Somebody got to come on up here.
I don't want to come up there, but I just want to say one thing. I'm a retired 32-year teacher, and I took part Thursday in a press conference at the ISD headquarters that Harriet Earhart, former state representative Harriet Earhart has. And we all said that the thing that is so disturbing about this effort is the fact that none of these people have any education, credentials, or background, and not one time have they ever said anything about what they really plan to do for the children. And I'm sorry, Harriet and I were talking. She said, it's just like, oh, I think I'm going to go do surgery now. You know, a friend and I were talking, and I said, gee, does Mike Rawlings think that just because he was the CEO of Pizza Hut, that he knows what's best? And he says, Brooks looks at me and says, oh, well, Judy, you know, kids like pizza. He was the pizza, you know, he says, that's about how far-fetched it is. And so that's what a lot of us as educators who care about the children, that's what disturbs me the most. There hadn't been one thing said about what they're going to do for the kids. And that's why I really want everybody to, you know, to look at it, because we're the most, you know, our profession is not looked at as a profession. It seems like everybody else knows what's best. And so it's about the money. So
who's next? Anybody else? Come on up here. You about ready to go home? All right. I guess I'm the last man standing.
You are rebut?
Yeah, sure. No, hey, wait, let me, I'm the last man standing. No, you're not up yet. All right, no, you're not up yet. Anyway, I'm the last man standing as far as rebuttals are concerned. But this whole thing maybe is, I put some notes here. It's just another opportunity to boost private and religious interests at the expense of public schools. I don't think this is part of what I think this is all about. In some respects, after private interests have smashed public education through all the cuts that have happened, they will argue that only solution to crumbling education, which they crumble but won't admit, is competition and choice. That's their game. So that's what they got people, you mentioned it earlier in your speech that people are disturbed already, so this is a nice way to get it across. The legal distinction between private and home schools are not really, they're not defined. So if they go to home rule, you could end up with home schools, I know that. Scholarships will be a scheme to hand out taxpayer money for religious instruction. That can happen. The Texas Constitution mandates that state provides its citizens with an education. That I believe that's in our Constitution, and provides that tax funds should be used exclusively for establishing and maintaining a system of free public schools. Well, we don't have, if you break this down, you won't have free public schools. You'll go to something else. Private schools don't provide a report card for the results of the public. Remember that. Nor do they account to taxpayers for what they serve, or for who they underserve, and who they refuse to serve. The community can't judge whether to tax dollars are being used well. If you have private education, you don't have that. Who could possibly support this besides misguided lawmakers? It turns out that it's supported by a pool of people who have a lot of money and no real interest in improving education. I think that's part of what our problem is. Some, such as Betty DeVos Alliance for School Choice, is a billionaire, fundamentalist Christian, and a right-wing political activist, has made it her mission to end public education as we know it and replace it with a system built around taxpayer-funded religious and other private schools. The Walton Family Foundation spends millions in support of vouchers. We should know these things. Vouchers are bad public policy. They tear away millions of dollars that are needed badly for public schools. This is part of what private industry does. Charter districts would not have to comply with laws governing class size, teacher contracts, parental rights, and the rights to elect citizens of school boards. That would be gone. SOPS, Sabotage Our Public Schools, was deliberately formed as a 501c4 organization which permits the financial backers remain anonymous. This is an affront to transparency in public office. The Home Rule District is a threat to the principles of democracy, the right to elect representatives entrusted with policy development and taxing authority, the right of students, parents, and employees to due process, and the right to affect policy through a democratic process without unreasonable restrictions. That's my view anyway. So now we get our speaker gets, oh, well, come on up here. We have another, I can't believe it, we have another person who wants to say something.
So y'all are really amazed that I care to say anything about this, right? Okay, time myself. As a taxpayer, the attempt for them to take away our ability to vote in the democratic process offends me greatly. Number one. Number two, thank you, Hobie, for laying it out so clearly what is going on behind the scenes and for gathering all of this information so that we can be more informed when people ask us, what's all the big deal about? Because we know that what happens when people are trying to change the hearts and minds of those who would sort of go along and listen to somebody who sounds a little bit more impressive or sounds a little bit more intelligent or well studied on a subject. This can go very, very badly if people don't pay attention and do a little bit of their own research, okay? I was waiting for someone to rebut from the other side, but I think that they've kind of scattered. I suspect that just because they wouldn't get this in by November's election, by that magical August 17th or whatever date you mentioned, August 19th date, to get it on this ballot, that is not going to stop them, okay? This was started well before that law was put into place in 1995. Some of our former state representatives, who I think did a fantastic job of serving, have warned us about the fact that they are trying to kill public education with the death of 1,000 cuts. Just keep bleeding it and bleeding it and bleeding it until it is dry. And I so much appreciate the comment that was made about the fact that corporations do want nice, docile workers. And it reminds me of a woman that Mike and I know who served many years teaching in China, in some of the far out provinces, teaching English to the Chinese there, and how she became friends with individuals, and how much control the government has over who gets to work in a particular job and who doesn't, right? To the tune of people not even speaking up for their rights because they're afraid that they will have retaliation against their family members, etc. Now, in this group, nobody's really shy about speaking up. However, we all know that even if retaliation is against the law, it happens. I've got 2 minutes. It happens, and the way that they're trying to get around retaliation for people who would speak up is to lump them into the bottom 10%. Okay, this idea was used at Enron. Imagine that. You know, many large companies that took advantage of their wealth, their power, their position, lump people in to this instead of saying, hey, we've got an investment in someone that we've hired and trained and they've been doing some work for us. Maybe they're underperforming. How can we bring that up to performance? What have we failed to teach them? How have we failed to motivate them to do what we'd like them to do? No, they don't want that. They want docile sheep to go along and be workers who will not speak up and say, guess what? It offends me when you increase your own salary, Congress, whomever, you increase your own salary by these amazing percentages for getting no results. But for us, you hold us to a different standard, and you must glow in the dark to receive any kind of compensation increase. Okay, this is going on for years and years. All right, I'm going to end now. Hobie, thank you again.
Go ahead.
Well, this is actually, I think, if I'm going to be rebutting, I might be rebutting Ray. And he has left. But, you know, it's for the record. What's the big deal? What are you worried about? Wait a minute. You have everything to be worried about. And that's, I don't think that this really should be an issue where conservatives should be against what you're talking about. I think they should be on the same page with you. And specifically, if you wanted one group, which I believe is on the same page on this issue, maybe not on every issue, but it is a group called Women on the Wall. We had a lady by the name of Alice Linehan come from Women on the Wall, womenonthewall.org, and speak to us about this. And she promoted the idea that, in fact, yes, I personally, I support homeschooling. I support other options, private schooling. But what Alice brought up is you cannot do that without considering that you also need a healthy public education system. It's not an either-or situation. It is both. Thank you.
Anyone left?
If John gets 2, can I get 2?
Come on up here.
It sounds like a tag team.
Well, that's what makes this place so fun. I just want to give you a tool, just an example of things that we have in our consciousness. In college, I tried to do too many things. I was taking 17 and a half hours on the track team and in a play, all in the same quarter. So I was taking this French vocabulary course, got up to 1 hour before the final exam and had not even begun to study 100 words, most of which I knew would be on that test. So this was, pass it or get an F. And so I sat down and I talked to myself and I said, okay, I know that I can learn 3 of these words in, I forget just the time, 1 minute or something like that. So I took everything in my mind out of there except that. And I learned those 3 words. And then I put them aside over here and I said, I can learn 3 words in 1 minute. So I took another 3, I had them on little cards. And I went all the way through those words and got an A on the test. Now, it's like years ago, I had this room that was filled with the family's crud. And I wanted a little workshop because I wanted to get back into building radio model airplanes. And I'd go open the door and look at it and go, like that. It was too much. And so one day my wife was sitting there reading and she looked at me and she said, Albert, you need to just drop the idea of ever having a workshop. You'll never get to it. She said, but you need to assign yourself a task of going into that room every day and spending 15 minutes just straighten up something with no goal whatsoever except something for 15 minutes. 2 weeks later, I had a workshop. You could never eat a cow nonstop, but we've all eaten the equivalent of several of them in our lifetimes. And if you can take the mind and isolate it to a specific, totally focused item at a time, you can take an enormous project and break it down and get through it and learn it and do it or whatever you need to do amazingly well. We have tremendous tools that we can avail ourselves of. And I would love to see the educational system get into more of these out-of-the-box ways of pursuing what we have and what these children have. You have to go on the internet and put in Holland's Got Talent, Amira, and put in English on there too. You'll get the English subtitles. You will not believe what this 9-year-old can do in singing opera. It's amazing. Holland's Got Talent, Amira, A-M-I-R-A, and put English in there on the, you'll love it.
Are we out of people? Is there anybody? He's back there. No? All right. Anyone else? All right. Okay. I guess we're out of people. Anyway, Hobie Hukill gets the comment on the comment. I think he did a great job. I forgot to mention that. And he gets the comment on the comment now and close this meeting. You get the last word. See, that's the beautiful. You get to comment on all these comments.
Well, I'll do what I can, hopefully. First of all, thank you. You've been most gracious, most gracious. I'll make a couple of quick responses. Maybe just a little, what shall we call it? A little self-revelation here. Ayn Rand was my muse in 7th grade. I believed in libertarianism hook, line, and sinker. I was a libertarian. My best friend's father was the president, the leader of the John Birch Society here in Dallas. He had the American Opinion bookstore down in Snyder Plaza. When I was at school, I had US out of UN plastered across my notebook. So, I know whereof you speak. Now, I no longer partake of that particular worldview or that particular point of view. Succinctly, there were two things that did me in, theoretically. One was that the libertarians who followed Ayn Rand, who hated Christians, hated religion, were all fundamentalist Christians. That just threw me away. I mean, I just could not possibly figure that out. That was the first thing that got me going. It was a contradiction, as Piaget would say, and that started me out of that rut. Or not a rut, but out of my own rut. Let me put it that way. The other thing is that at a theoretical level, I did see that, unfortunately, while libertarianism talked a good game, it was unfortunately not particularly realistic. It was rather utopian. In fact, it failed to take account of the inevitable tendency toward monopoly of private enterprises. And without substantial regulation or whatever, which is anathema to the libertarian doctrine, you simply cannot deal with it. And the way they dealt with it was simply not to acknowledge it. I guess the Koch brothers are, one would think they are great libertarians. Their dad was a great John Bircher, that's for sure. Anyway, there is no point in casting aspersions or anything else on that particular approach. I do recognize that the impulse to individual liberty and freedom and being untrammeled is important and needs to be taken account of. As I said before, we are individual, but we are also collective, communal, familial, as you will. And that is never going to be an easy alliance. That's not going to be easily handled. With regard to the total domination of us, of the world, yes, you can say it's the UN or the uber rich. Look at NAFTA. Look at the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership. These violate all norms of national sovereignty. They essentially set up some kind of weird world court that's completely secret and dark. Whatever you want, however you want to characterize this, we certainly agree that there is a very strong, important trend worldwide to take control of the whole world. Whether it's 500 million of us that will be left or not, I don't know. If we go on this current trajectory and we hit four more degrees of average temperature by the end of the century, we're pretty much all dead meat. Yes, maybe that's what the Koch brothers have in mind. Maybe that's their part of the big job, getting rid of everybody. But anyway, we seem to be doing a heck of a good job, whatever. Whether they're plotting it or just nudging us along, I don't know. Anyway, educational quality, interestingly, someone mentioned the issue of educational quality going down, down, down. Diane Ravitch had a great little study. She put out this wonderful paper. She looked at the PISA scores going back to the 1950s and 60s. And in the great heyday of U.S. technological dominance and advance, no one was required to take Algebra 2. No one, in order to graduate, at all. The PISA scores, by the way, were mediocre. We, as a country, have always scored sort of in the middle range. We have never been particularly high on that particular score. Now, there is one way in which we have always exceeded, even way back then, and that is if you control for class, for SES. The more affluent students kicked the butts of anybody else in the world, U.S. students. Affluent U.S. students are at the apex of educational achievement across the world. Duh. You know, and they have not gone down in performance at all. Now, much has been said about some other ways of approaching education. Fair notice. My work in educational psychology was devoted to cognitive developmentalism. Jean Piaget, probably the best known exemplar of that particular school of thought. Maria Montessori, probably the finest exemplar of the pedagogy that comes out of such a point of view. Our child went to a Montessori school, a nonprofit, when that was possible in Austin. I certainly acknowledge that there are far more rewarding and more interesting ways of cultivating the cognitive abilities of our children, and I certainly would agree that what we're doing right now militates against that. Certainly the despicable robotic techniques that we are mandated to perform, like trained SEALs, and get our children to do the same, is outrageous. You know, and Mike Miles brought all of that, you know, bold disruption to us, and it's a disgrace. It is a disgrace. We can expect certainly nothing better from the corporate elites going forward either. Thanks for the suggestion. The Siberian school sounds interesting. I would have a lot of questions about it, but it sounds fascinating. It kind of reminds me of the old Summerhill approach long ago. Susie, you're right on target. You know, you and I are shoulder to shoulder. Thanks. It's all of our struggle, and the more we stay a part of this, I think we perhaps can reclaim our public schools. We'll need to. Finally, the conservative versus liberal question. You know, I do believe that certainly on the questions of public education, there are libertarian-oriented individuals that are highly critical and properly so of the corporate elites that are attempting to dominate what we do. We may disagree fundamentally on what makes us all tick as a society or as individuals, but I think there is overlap. I think there is common ground, and I would be more than happy to work with anybody that sees that. And at least if we can kind of keep it at the local level, I think there's a lot we can agree on. Where it goes from there, perhaps we'll diverge, but that's not our question right now, is it? Well, listen, folks, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate the opportunity, and we'll have to do this again sometime. Thank you.
Okay, we have to be out of here by 9. They close at 9. Our speaker is invited to down to Starbucks down the corner. We generally go down there afterwards. You're all welcome down there. We'll buy a speaker coffee down there and his wife, if they like, and we'll keep him happy. And you get to talk to him some more and whatever you want to do. So that's it for tonight. See you next week.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us, or follow us, and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call. So when visiting the Barbeck's restaurant, tell them you want your reservation to the next College of Complex class.